call to order the regular meeting of the Sturgis City Council for today, April 20th, 2026. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Brian, if you want to come up and give the prayer.
Okay, let's pray. Father, I thank you for the beautiful day. Lord, just very nice outside, and Lord, just makes me think about the kindness and love that you have towards us, all the good things you give us, and thank you especially for our town. Just pray you bless our evening together. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Moving on to number 3, approval of agenda. Do I have a motion for the approval of the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Got a first by Alex and a second by Jim. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no. That motion carries. Number 4, announcements and praise. John, if you want to come up. Yep, come on up. Yes, go ahead and have a chair. If the green light is on for the microphone.
Would you like me to time myself, or do you have a time limit?
Go ahead. You're fine. Yeah.
Okay, my name is John Dale. Can everyone hear?
Mm-hmm.
Super. I'm here visiting humbly from Spearfish, where I recently came from the city council meeting there, where I paid a short tribute to the former mayor here in Sturgis, and then also read a poem that I had recently written. And I'd like to repeat that here for you all. And I guess you probably don't need my address or anything like that. Height, weight, eye color. Okay, all right. Okay, so it was shocking to me to learn that the mayor abruptly resigned after, from a distance, witnessing some of the tumult here in Sturgis. And then to see that he passed away so closely after resigning was just incredible. Words defy me. And it got me thinking about what he was working on that was so important that he didn't quit until practically the last minute. And so I encouraged everyone in our community of Spearfish at the city council meeting tonight to ask all of their friends and their family, coworkers, what he was working on that was so darn important. Because that seems like an important thing to do. And I don't know what else I could recommend right now, but that's my tribute to former Mayor Forrester. Subsequent to that, I read my latest cowboy poem, which is my first cowboy poem. I am a writer. It's what I've always been. I've worked lots of odd jobs, but everything with me starts with a pen. I do like to hunt birds, though, just as a disclaimer. This is called Vaquero Pecadora. When is an old cowboy really done riding that range through the rolling hills in our minds and the frosty mornings left behind, and through the warm blowing prairie winds of change? The truth is, it ain't over. He'll be punching cows for hire. Even though he's gone now and you miss him, just know he'll be saving you a seat by the fire. He looked across that room, along the old bunkhouse floor, at the boards along the ceiling that led up to that door. His movement in slow motion makes that familiar silhouette. He'll be there whenever he's needed. That's a sure fire bet. The shadows he'd made 1,000 times or more, coming in tired after dark and leaving out at 3:45. He can't ever come back to this old shack, to these old tired walls, because the range has got him now, in an endless spring, summer, and fall. So unfurrow your brows now He's where he wants to be most. He's with his Savior and his horse and an old cow dog and his cows. Thank you for giving some of your time to me today, and that's all I have. And so I wish you all the very best in dealing with this, and if there's anything I can do, just ask. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thanks, John.
Anybody on council have announcements and praise? Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, we've got a few things, and since John started with that, I'd like to recognize Pastor Bill Myros for the good job that he did at Kevin's funeral. Thank you so much for the comfort you provided and for a number of people that were blessed because of that. Thank you very much, Bill. And John's gone, but we could easily say, I think he'd be tickled to say that somebody thought about him as a horse, but I'm sure he has a bike somewhere that he's thinking. From some of the things that we need to be reminded of, individuals interested in running for mayor or the Ward 1 City Council seat in the upcoming June 2nd Sturgis municipal election may now pick up nominating petitions at the finance office at Sturgis City Hall. Petitions must be returned by 5 p.m. on Monday, May 4th. And I understand that's different than what had been announced earlier. So it is Monday, May 4th. Also throughout April, the annual quilt show held at the Sturgis Public Library. It's an annual tradition celebrating artistry and creativity of local quilters. And I know they always appreciate you coming in and seeing the quilts on the wall. Also, senior citizens remind you that in celebration of the Shining Star Volunteers, they've got a special program honoring volunteers this Thursday in Sturgis at the Senior Citizen Center, 10:30 Thursday morning, 10:30 for volunteers. By the way, the Sturgis Public Library is closed on Friday, April 24th, this Friday, so librarians can attend the Black Hills Library's mini conference all day. That's on Friday the 24th. The Key City Giving Gals event will be held next Monday, a week from today, at the Oasis Fireside Bar on Main Street in Sturgis. They have chosen to support St. Vincent de Paul, the Animal Shelter, Kiwanis Food Shelter, Hospital Auxiliary, and the Sturgis Library. And that's for the Key City Giving Gals. If you don't know about that, that's quite a program in Sturgis. It involves many dozen women. Municipal Utility Board meets a week from tomorrow, Tuesday, April 28th at 7 a.m. City Hall Council meeting. Sturgis Area Chambers Spring Community Yard Sale is Saturday, May 2nd. And I don't know if there's anybody here from the chamber, but I think you have to, if you want to advertise that, it's going to be by the 29th. Stop, is that what it is? 29th, you go in and give them, used to be $20 when whatever it is. Anyway, it's not too much, and they help you promote it. So that's coming up on Saturday, May 2nd. Okay, Tony, that's what I have.
All righty, thank you, Jim. Any announcements and praise from the public?
Hey, Jim, you should say about the cleanup because you're gonna have a council meeting before.
Oh, thank you. I went through all of those things. Oh, yes. Sturgis Spring Citywide Cleanup, and that always follows the yard sale. Monday, May 4th to Friday, May 8th, the Sturgis Spring Citywide Cleanup will be held. If you decide for the city of Sturgis, you'll find out more about it. That's all the week of May 4th through the 8th, Citywide Cleanup. Say again?
Your items will be picked up on the day of your garbage pickup during that week.
Okay.
So if your garbage day is Wednesday, Wednesday's when the crew will be there. All right.
They must have expected I'd know that. But since I got Jesse in my life, I don't have to worry. Thanks, Jess.
All right, Bonnie, come on up.
Sturgis. I just always like to give credit where credit is due. I was at Recycle this last week, and while I was doing my things, I looked over, and there were two young women with a little pickup like mine, emptying their garbage bags into the yard waste, like they should, in spite of the fact that what they were seeing was multiple bags that hadn't been emptied. So when I was cleaning up the perimeter inside there, I drove by and I thanked them. I said, thank you for recycling and doing it right. You just saved the wages of whatever city worker would have had to take those out of the bag. And so we had a little chit chat, and that was that. And when I left, I was went out to the outside in a beautiful day, so I was cleaning up the Freeman side of the outside of the recycle. And here they come. They got done and they came over in their truck and hopped out. They said, well, we just thought we'd help you. So they helped me clean up that side. Well, it went so fast that then I went to the other side and they came with me. But they were so willing, so upbeat, and so anxious to know more about what's the right way to do things. And I just want to give those two women credit for saving the city some money. And I just wish more people would do that. I've said again and again, we're always asking, what did the city do for me? What about my pothole? But my question is always, what did you do to help the city use your taxes in better ways and ways that you know? There are things we can do ourselves, but crying out loud, do it. But I'm not going to shut up about this because it's just one of my issues. But I just want to give those two women credit. They were just laughing and doing their yard stuff and kicked right in and don't know me from Adam. So it was very nice to see that. Thank you.
Thanks, Bonnie. Anybody else from the public? None being seen, we'll move on to item number 5, non-agenda matters that may come before the council. Anybody on council have anything? Anybody in the public? None being seen, we'll move on to item number 6, department updates. And 6.1 is SEDC 2025 Annual Informational Report. Amanda from SEDC will be given that.
Oh, there we go. Good evening. Amanda Anglin, Executive Director of the Sturgis Economic Development Corporation. Thank you for giving me a few minutes to just go over our 2025 annual report. So I'm just going to hit a few highlights on activity in Sturgis for 2025. So our population is approximately estimated at 7,086. We saw total taxable sales at $256.4 million. 15 new businesses opened. 25 new jobs were created with additional jobs retained. 269 building permits were issued, and 27 new single-family homes were permitted. Sturgis continues to be the economic engine of Meade County, driving business growth, sales activity, and investment across the region. For new business attraction remains a focus for SEDC. In the industrial park, we saw 4 new businesses open in SEDC-owned buildings. Those businesses were Sturgis Equipment Rental, Key City Landscapes, Holzer Commercial Doors, and A2B Construction. These openings highlight the value of having ready-to-use buildings and sites available when businesses are ready to act. SEDC also worked with 11 active business prospects in 2025. While not all of the projects moved forward, every conversation that we had strengthens our future recruitment and refines our strategies. We had a major project going on at Exit 32, which is the vacant lot next to the Scooptown Car Wash. We had gotten to the point where we reached a signed letter of intent, but ultimately the project did not proceed due to circumstances outside of our control as well as the community's control. We're disappointed that this happened, so now we are repositioning the site for future opportunity, and our next step is to list that with a real estate agent to gain more exposure across the Black Hills and the region. So hopefully we can see maybe some additional activity coming in the coming year. We continue to support our existing businesses. That's a critical part of what we do. In 2025, we connected with more than 75 businesses through business retention and expansion visits, through project assistance, and through resource coordination. We also worked with 15 businesses on expansion projects. 5 of those have been completed in 2026, and there are a number of them that are still actively pursuing their project. We helped connect 10 businesses to financing, technical assistance, and state or regional programs. We worked with our revolving loan funds to help support Belle Jolie Winery with the completion of their 10,000 square foot wine production facility. And then through the Meade County Revolving Loan Fund, we also helped Sagebrush Salon relocate within Meade County, keeping that business going in our rural communities. Housing continues to be both a challenge and an opportunity, not just Sturgis, but across the Black Hills. When new houses are built, they fill immediately, showing consistent demand. SEDC continues planning through the Sturgis Strategic Housing Trust Fund. We're just waiting for funds to become available so we can help with affordable housing projects in the community. Infrastructure work is ongoing and often behind the scenes. We're coordinating with utility partners, developers, and local governments to ensure that our communities are ready to go. There was a fund referred to as the Future Sturgis Fund, which some of you may be familiar with. It was put together 10, 15 years ago during the Future Sturgis Initiative, and there was still dollars left in that fund that were just sitting there not being used. So we chose to grant the remaining dollars in that fund to the Meade County Fair Board to help support their renovation projects at the Fair Barn and get the bathrooms completed, I think is what they're working on currently. So in the report, I did a look back from 2020 to 2025, just looking at trends over the last 5 years. Taxable sales across Sturgis and Meade County continue to trend upward. New business formations remain steady, led by Sturgis. Building permits and housing activity declined after the pandemic peaks, but are now stabilizing. And then multifamily housing remains limited countywide. We're just not seeing housing and multifamily growing currently. Economic development works best when viewed over multiple years and not a single snapshot. And just this last year reminded me a lot that economic development is truly a marathon. It's not a sprint. A lot of the work that we do happens behind the scenes, forming relationships, preparing sites, supporting businesses. But overall, it directly impacts our jobs, our tax base, and our community vitality. So we continue to remain focused on business attraction, entrepreneur support, housing infrastructure, storytelling and marketing, and community advocacy. So unless anyone has any questions, please take some time to read through it. There's a lot of information in the report. And thank you all for being a partner for economic development and helping us do the work to keep our community thriving. Any questions?
Thank you, Amanda. Anybody on council have any questions? No, but thank you
All right,
very
thank
much.
you.
Appreciate it. Moving on to 6.2, the March sales tax informational update. Aaron, you got this?
Yeah, good evening. Sales tax, January through March, we're still, both in the sales tax and the triple B, we're above where we were last year, or above where we were 2024, and we're kind of right on track with what we were anticipating for 2026. You can see right now for the sales tax, we're at $477,674. Last year we were at $463,399. And much greater than we were back in 2024. And if you look at the triple B, we're sitting at 70,500. That's about 5,000 more than last year and about 3,000 more than 2024. So for sales tax, we still continue to perform kind of what we were anticipating. Any of your questions?
Anybody have any questions for Aaron? None? Okay. 6.3, March 2026 monthly financial report. Ann?
Excuse me. Good evening. I am going to, if you look at, if you've read the staff report, you'll see where the revenues, I compared the revenues and expenditures for March. And and everything should be at 25%. Nothing more than 25% for your expenditures, nothing less than 25% for your revenues. The general fund revenues are at 21%, expenses are at 26%. Liquor revenues, 17.2%, expenses, 9.08%. Water fund revenues, 21%, expenses, 24.85%. Wastewater revenues, 24.6%, expenses, 26.9%. Sanitation fund revenues, 22%. Expenses, 14.43%. Ambulance fund revenues, 19.8%, and expenses, 41.97%. Now, if you look at the chart, it is on the screen. It'll be a little easier to read than the handout I gave you. If you look at that, the revenues in general fund for March, and that's due to the federal grant money that's been received, and that will do a supplemental appropriation and to move that money, and that will look different once I do that. We do that resolution, which I'll probably do in May. And then if you look at wastewater expenses, they're high in due to again projects and money that has gone out, and then when that money comes in, that will even out also. Liquor, wastewater, sanitation, they all stayed pretty even for March. They looked good. And the water expenditures are high, and though that was due to a bill to Keller Drilling for $58,957. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Ann from council? Any from the public? Okay. Thanks, Ann.
Yep.
We'll move on to number 8, consider the consent agenda. We'll do all of these as one, or we can pull one if somebody has any questions on them. And it's pretty much minutes, payroll, and some public hearings. Anybody on council want to pull any of them from 8? Anybody from the public? None being seen, I'll take a motion to consider the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I got a first by Ruth, a second by. All those in favor of the motion say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed say no. Motion carries. Move on to number 9, approval of the claims. We have some council bills, MasterCard, and the salary sheet. The claims total is $343,659.55. Anybody have any questions on any of this for Ann? Any from the public? None being seen. Can I get a motion for the claims?
I'll move to approve.
I got a first by Terry. Say no. Those opposed say no. Motion carried. Move on to number 10. Consider to approve resolution 2026-14, a street closure for the 21st annual Fulton Street Bash. And I think Robin has this staff report.
Good evening. Hello. So I am going to ask for consideration to approve resolution 2026-14 to temporarily close the street for the 21st annual Fulton Street Bash for Bruce Bradley and Tracy Davis. This is their 21st year. They haven't made any changes from last year. They want to close the street same as last year, Dakota Street from Fulton Street east to the alley, and Dakota Street from Fulton Street west all the way to Davenport Street. So the footprint is exactly the same as last year. I believe they have people that kind of in the intersection so they can keep people safe. Tracy is here if you guys have any additional questions.
Is it
For
pretty much
her.
the same items from the city, the trash cans and whatnot?
Trash cans, I think, is what they asked for.
Okay.
Tracy, was there anything else besides trash cans?
Rick, you have something you want to add?
I mean, this year giving that we'll likely be using a third-party hauler. We won't be able to, I mean, there'll be a charge for the trash cans because we'll be paying.
Yep.
So
Tracy's
just,
okay.
and I talked to Bruce about that, and he was
Okay.
good with it.
Cool. Any other questions from council? Questions, comments from the public? None being heard, do I have a motion to approve resolution?
Motion to approve.
I have a first by Alex.
Second.
Second by Mark. All those in favor of the motion, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Moving on to number 11, tabled items. Number 11.1, consider first reading of ordinance 2026-3, temporary residential camping. Eric, I think you have this one?
I'll take it. I'll try to be relatively brief on this because the lengthy written staff report in the packet is meant to do most of the heavy lifting on this item for what's left. In the staff report, before getting into the... Yeah, it is. Before getting into the specific text of the ordinance in the staff report, I wanted to give kind of a high-level overview of the history of this item, going back from former Mayor Forrester's practical problem, then the council directing that ordinance to the ordinance committee, and getting it back from the ordinance committee, having a public review of that. Ultimately, Mayor Forrester ended up changing the policy direction of that ordinance, worked with the council, members of the public to try to develop one, and established the infographic that was placed in one of the March meeting packets that kind of laid out Mayor Forrester's proposal for a new framework for temporary residential camping. Council reviewed and considered that over the course of a couple meetings. We had some additional comment on it at the last meeting. My role, of course, was to attempt to take that infographic and the conversations that I had with Mayor Forrester and all of you and attempt to draft ordinance text from that. A lot of members from the public commented on that at the last meeting. I tried to review and consider all of that both in the meeting and after the meeting, going through the ordinance. A lot of good, helpful suggestions and requested clarifications. So I did try to address all of those in some detail in the report and add those where I felt like it was appropriate and provided further clarity. And then again, the goal is to ultimately draft an ordinance that aligns with the council's direction on policy for this matter. So I can't speak for the council, of course, but based on my history with the ordinance, it does feel like we're getting closer. We'll see what you all think by the end of this. But with that, I'm happy to stand by, answer any questions that the council may have about the ordinance text or any of the revisions. I did put together a red line version in the packet. That is the ordinance that was presented at the last meeting, along with the red line changes that I'm proposing for this meeting based on some of the comments and concerns from both the council and the public. So I'd be happy to stand by for any questions or any further explanation as needed.
And then I see in the packet, Aaron, you added 3 examples roughly of what the permit process could possibly look like.
Yeah, we did. Gave a couple different examples, single family owner or non-owner. So if you're somebody who was renting for something, you'd be putting an application in, had the owner's name and had a signature from the owner. Also had primary residence with a vacant lot or adjacent or a nearby lot. And then we all had an example of just a vacant lot that was not adjacent or nearby a primary lot. So this was kind of our first cut for the permit, and spent some time working with some of the staff and just working through that. I'm assuming that as we continue to develop this and as we go through that first year, we'll get some good feedback on how to continue to make improvements on that particular permit. It's 2 pages, and then whatever the site layout. On the site layout, I used a couple of examples. We used one from Beacon. The nice thing about using Beacon, which is that free map from Meade County, kind of shows all your lot lines. So it provides all that. You can also use Google, or in some cases, we just did a hand-drawn one because we've received a couple examples from the public, at least one example from the public with hand-drawn, and that works just fine. It provided all the information. We had the address. We could go into Beacon, look at the boundaries, and so it provided the information that we were kind of looking for. So again, that's our first draft for their permit.
Anybody from council have any questions for Eric or Aaron on this? How about public? Daniel, you wanted to come up? If you would state your name, address, and try to keep it to 3 minutes if possible, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Hello, council members. And my name is Daniel Granillo, Ward 2, 1316 Spruce Street. I'm the homeowner and operator of Buddy's Campsite during Rally Week. And I just have one proposed change to the proposal and just two clarifying questions regarding the ordinance. The proposed change is the rally window. I respectfully request consideration to amend this from 3 days to 7 days immediately preceding the official rally dates, with no change to the proposed 3 days following the rally. Many guests prefer to arrive early for pre-rally activities before peak congestion, and this adjustment would better reflect actual visitor patterns. Is that doable?
I would think so.
Well, aren't there 7 other days that are not accounted for in the temporary camping rally specific part of the ordinance that's unrelated to?
Basically, for the rally dates, we had from the Monday prior to the beginning of the rally, starts on a Friday, so that was Monday, was what we had in the ordinance, and it would end, it ends on Sunday, and I think it was 3 days after that. Was that Wednesday?
It's the official 10 days of the rally plus 3 before and 3 after is the way it's drafted now.
Okay.
And yes, there are 7 unrelated days. Those are only specifically for non-commercial, non-public camping. So the idea is family and friends, a different rally event, union or something like that. So most owners probably won't want to use those 7 days or qualify to use them in Daniel's instance. Of course, I wouldn't have any issue. What the rally window is entirely up to the council. We ultimately, I think initially it was the 10 days of the rally, and then 3 days before and 3 days after were added. The council certainly has the ability to tack more days onto the front or the end of that. Just understanding that the effects of that on the neighborhood and residents.
Any thoughts from council?
So you're asking for 7 days before and after the 10?
No, just 7 days before. No change to after the rally, primarily because the rally week is very chaotic, and a lot of our guests that come to stay with us, they come, during pre-rally, and especially this year, a lot of kids start up at school during the week of rally, so a lot of them are coming during pre-rally dates.
Sure.
And it's a norm. 7-day pre-rally window. It aligns with many reservation timelines, and that's what I'm proposing.
Would council feel comfortable adding that language in?
I'm fine with it.
Okay.
I certainly do. I think that's exactly what Dan said, is that we need to see what really happens as opposed to what we'd like to happen. And the people that come early, we're there as welcome as anyone, whether it's pre-rally or rally.
Okay.
So I would approve.
And would we want to leave the 3 days after, like it's stated now?
Yes.
Okay.
So you can start camping, the campers, and the Friday before the rally starts.
The current ordinance, it doesn't have like 5 days, it's just a date, right? A number of days or something.
Correct. The current ordinance structure is not broken, does not differentiate between rally camping and non-rally camping. That was one of the changes that came from Mayor Forrester's new proposal.
Do you need a motion for that, or is this something you could just write into?
You know, either way, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to get it into a motion. Otherwise, depending on what the council wants to do, I know this is only the first public comment. We could leave it to the end and then just do a full motion. If the council wants to go proceed with first reading, we can have first reading reflect these changes. That would also be the kind of change that could easily be made between first and second reading if the council needs more time to think about it. But as opposed to voting now, maybe it makes more sense to continue the conversation.
Thank you.
And then my two other questions. One is clarification on owner occupancy requirement. I only asked because I went on to the Meade County Tax website just because I purchased my property in June 2023, and it shows I'm the owner. However, my homeowner information, it populates my old address from Tennessee, and I just don't want any confliction that says, hey, is that Daniel's primary residence or not? So I guess my question is, will there be a grace period or alternative forms of documentation accepted to verify compliance for owner occupancy?
It certainly can. I think the way that I was just looking for, right now, the only distinction on owner-occupied property, I believe, is in reference to vacant lots. That's the only thing that survived into this version of the ordinance. So vacant lots are allowable for camping only if it is contiguous or nearby an owner-occupied residential property. So that would be the only distinction for that. Then we put in the ordinance that it just has to receive the owner-occupied tax designation from Meade County. And so, I would think administratively that could be handled if, usually that's a box that appears on your county tax records and is checked if you get that owner-occupied tax status. And are you saying it's not checked?
It's checked.
Okay.
However, my contact info on it reads my previous
So it
home
would, the way
as
the
well.
ordinance is drafted now, if you receive that designation from the county, and it could be drafted in such a way that if you were eligible for it, even though there was some lag, that's the idea behind it, to reflect the council's policy judgment that certain properties should be available to owner-occupied residents and not secondary dwellings. Yep.
Okay, and my last question is regarding the appeal process timeline. Permit is denied or conditioned in a way that materially impacts homeowners. What is the expected time frame for the Board of Adjustment to hear permit appeals?
I guess it could be any way that the council likes it to be. The Board of Adjustment meets anytime there's an item on their agenda that needs Board of Adjustment consideration and approval, and the Board of Adjustment meets at the same time as the City Council because it's comprised of the City Council. So in all likelihood, the permit appeal would be heard at the next council meeting following the denial that was consistent with the public notice requirements for the meeting, and then that decision would almost likely be made at that meeting or probably in written findings following up.
I just wanted to see if there was a process to expedite the review to allow homeowners sufficient time to adjust prior to the rally in August. Something to think about. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Come on up, Bonnie.
Easier said than done. Bonnie Alberts. I had a couple of questions that were in line with those that he just asked. With the board, is the board able to have a special meeting? Are they able to call a special meeting? If that's necessary to,
I would think so, yeah.
It's, sorry. It is totally possible. You know, the direction that we've had previously from mayors and the council is that we don't want, you know, just random special meetings to consider one or two random permits. Probably the thing that would be most easy to administer is having a special Board of Adjustment meeting to consider all permits before the rally, in line with Daniel's comment, so that any changes could be made. Of course, the intention from visiting with the city administrator is that most of those issues will hopefully be resolved between staff, the administrator, and the applicant, and not have to end up in front of the Board of Adjustment, but that's certainly something that the chair could take into consideration.
Like Jesse said last time, we're working to try to get to yes for everybody on this, so. Anything else, Bonnie?
Yeah, I would think, Bonnie, or I'd hope that, you know, if there was some small issue with the application, that it could be worked out without having to go through all of that,
Sure.
you know, not just being denied. Hey, here's an issue, can we do something about that? Yep, okay, great, there you go. You know, would be how I would personally hope it would go.
And we've seen that through the process, a willingness to expedite and be cooperative, and, you know, that it's not a stone wall. I did have a question also, and now I'm even a little more confused, about owner-occupied, because after I waded through all this, I still was not sure about owner-occupied, because I have always used my mother's home for rental, for rally rental, for campers. That is not my...
There is no owner-occupied requirement on a house.
Okay.
Correct?
If there's a house on it, it's not,
If you rent, or let's say your tenant who rents your
Right.
house wanted to do camping, they would have to get your permission as the
Right.
owner. And you, as the owner, can rent that property out.
Well, and I would think that in the, you know, in the application process, that if the person wanting to have the camping is not the property owner, that there would be a requirement that the owner participated. I don't let my renters wholesalely sublet, but I would not have a problem for the right renter to oversee the camping. However, the owner-occupied is an issue of liability and responsibility. And even though I use a house I don't live in for my campers, I'm always there. I'm overseeing that. I mean, that buck stops with me. So that was that question. I just wasn't clear on that one. There are some things that what I see are, and I didn't know whether these things should go on not on the agenda, because they're not the resolution itself, they're not the ordinance itself, but they're contingent, and once we vote on the ordinance, then we're on to something else. So I'm just going to bring up is that I do see some potential revenue streams opening up if we've got people who have used vacant lots before that are going to no longer be available. That certainly would lend itself well to off-site parking that we're probably going to need. So I would encourage that we be helpful to for people to make that transition and figure that out and find one another. The other thing is, if we're all parking on the grass, parking off the street, we said motorcycles could be on the street now, didn't we? But there'll be a puck business to be had. And the fire extinguisher, I just think of myself, I have a fire extinguisher, but I guess when I look at this and the way this is worded, it's good wording. You did a nice job on this, Eric. But it says, ooh, do I know what kind of fire extinguisher I really need? So I would hope that out of this would grow from the city some coaching, some guidelines, and availability that would help people come into compliance and do what we're doing better than we've been doing it. Because I think that's the whole goal, is we want people to be safer than they were. I guess I would hope from that would also come when I think about the way the 2021 ordinance change went right by me, being my COVID year. I would hope that we would maybe pull together some info sessions, some public announcements, making it really widely and well known that there is a new ordinance and a new set of requirements out there, and just making an effort to seek camping providers out to make sure they are informed and don't get caught in the, well, it's past June 15th and you didn't ask. There are going to be out there. There will be people out there who just didn't see this coming, and I hate to see people get hit by trains. Let me see if I had one other one. Let me look at 9106 and 7. Okay, here we go. I'm printed on both sides, which gets tricky. So, am I understanding correctly? Non-rally residential camping has some maximums, but those maximums can be adjusted by application?
The non-rally camping does not have a provision that it can be adjusted by application in the current ordinance.
Could it be?
It could be.
I mean, if you're talking a family reunion, I mean, it wouldn't take much to exceed 3 units and 10 campers. That doesn't mean we're going to let somebody put 25 units and 150 campers, but I can see that that's a fairly low limit for a family gathering even, and as long as we have an application process in place, I would think that it would be reasonable to allow a vehicle to ask if they anticipate exceeding that. Doesn't impact me, but I can see where it might some. And then the by right residential, rally residential camping shall not exceed at any given time the 3 and the 10, but that one is permitted by application, right?
Yep, the 3 and the 10 is what you can do without coming to the city at all, as long as you follow the requirements of the ordinance. But then if you want to exceed those maximums to where there is no ceiling cap, it would be through the permit approval process.
Right. Okay. And that's what I was thinking. I just wanted to be clear, and I guess that would be my recommendation, that for non-rally residential camping as well, that we have a vehicle in place already functioning that one could approach.
Well, I don't disagree that that would be reasonable. Some of the conversation that was had previously about this issue, again, the way that the ordinance is drafted right now, and as we're talking only non-rally camping, if Sturgis adopts this ordinance, it will have, we believe, significantly by far the most liberal residential camping ordinance of any community that we've located in South Dakota. Most communities do not allow it at all, with the idea being that if you want to have a kind of event like a large family reunion, the best place to do that is at a commercial campground and not at your neighborhood parcel, but recognizing that some parcels would obviously be better suited for that than other parcels. And so that's why it was left the way it is, with the idea of, like an RV coming with maybe 2 tents out for the kids or 2 RVs, that's the kind of event that people would expect to see around the neighborhood. Whereas, certainly, no categorical opposition to the idea of having a permit for such a thing. The question just becomes neighborhood compatibility on a land use / zoning issue. Again, unrelated to the rally.
Right. But when we have that application process in place, it just seems like it's less likely to drive people underground and covering up what they actually want and need to do if they've got a way to request it. And if the request appears to be not appropriate, not doable, that puts them in a position that the city itself can say, you know, have you considered this possibility or that possibility instead of, because that's not really going to work there. So I just think it opens more lines of communication. It was the 9112E, the suitable fire extinguishers proportional to the scale of the camping activity, and I realized that I didn't really know what that would be in my circumstance. So that's why I was saying, would there be a contact person that could guide and advise on a couple of little things like that that are in here? Then I had one question too. And again, this was about the only place that I sort of questioned the wording, is in 9115, the part about the Board of Adjustment. And the way that is written, it sort of sounds like the city administrator would make the decision on the petition. If they didn't, it would revert to the Board of Adjustment, but it'd be a cold day in hell before the Board of Adjustment overturned the city administrator's decision. It sounded like a pretty closed, not likely to happen. So I just would ask some reread and reconsider of the way that C and D are written. Board of Adjustment shall not substitute its policy judgment for that of the city administrator on matters committed by this chapter to the city administrator's review and determination. So if we're locked into the city administrator's review and determination, that really doesn't give the board much wiggle room.
It's true. It doesn't give the board much wiggle room, and again, for me, that was intentional language, and I understand why it's frustrating. And and one of the things that we've been trying to do is to educate both the council and the public on the role of the Board of Adjustment and how it's different than the city council, and that's why I use that building permit analogy. And you know, I wasn't going to use it, but somewhere, you know, probably because I've been doing so much research on, you know, fire, health, safety, welfare issues, somewhere in my feed popped up this, you know, advertisement that you could get when you were building a house. If you had tons of money to put these like remote roof mounted fire extinguishers on your house. So the example that I would use is if I had such a house that was protecting my investment, that was capable of putting out a fire anywhere on my property using AI applications and technology and fire suppression foam, and the city administrator told me I needed 3 5-pound fire extinguishers from Ace Hardware, that might be an abuse of discretion, but ultimately ultimately it's not Aaron, and it's probably not even the city administrator who's going to have the ultimate authority on these permits. It's going to be whoever the mayor designates that person is going to be. And so whether the issue, you know, if the issue is the sanitation plan sufficient, the city administrator is probably going to go to the public works director and ask for a review on that. You know, are the fire lanes, fire extinguisher proposed by the owner, are those sufficient? That's probably a question that the city administrator is going to pose to the fire chief. And so what we don't want to get into is a situation where everyone else is being applied uniform standards that you have to have a 5-pound ABC fire extinguisher, but then the one person who's required to do that has the ability to come in and appeal just because they don't like the requirement. So that's what we don't want to get into with the Board of Adjustment, and that's why we use that different standard of review. So my suggestion would be to, again, the goal is to never have any of these in front of the Board of Adjustment. Of course, it's always possible. I would say my recommendation would be to keep it the way it is and let us try to administer it for a few years and see how it goes and adjust it if there are problems. But I'm certainly not, not unsympathetic to, any concerns about the Board of Adjustment appeal process. But it is important when we're going into a permit type distinction for the public and the council to understand that these are quasi-judicial determinations, and that is meant to favor the property owner, such that, if I meet the requirements for a building permit to add an addition onto my house, that I'm not going to get my building permit denied because the neighbor doesn't want their view blocked. And so it would become then a political decision when we don't want it to be.
Well, and as I read this, I mean, you must be really tired of this, because when I got to this point, I was like, Okay, that sounds like Fat Chance.
Well, I kind of secretly love it, Bonnie, and that's why I'm here. And did you notice the ordinance is on normal size paper this time?
Yes, I did. I did notice that. And I even went in and asked him to print it for me because I assumed it wouldn't be. And she printed it and it came out short. And I thought, well, that's embarrassing. I could have done that myself.
I have a good excuse for that
thank
error,
you.
but it's so frustrating. I'm not going to tell you what it is. But
And I do believe you did that just for me.
well, now that you pointed it out, I did.
But I just felt like the tone of the language in that C&D was a little bit, don't even try it. But you did a good job on this. You did a really good job of weaving back together this pre-piece before we even got to the resolution. Just clarified so much and brought us back to where we wound up before the ordinance gets written, not where all the places we've been. And so I do appreciate the work you did because this is not easy to sort out. And the one piece that I'm not very clear about is that term by right. But that doesn't have to be now and that doesn't have to be in here. Just maybe you could fix me on that one time.
Yep, and I'll take a look at that language in C and D, and if there's any changes that can be proposed, we'll do it in between readings.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Come on up.
I kind of agree with Bonnie, Joy Nichols, sorry. I kind of agree with Bonnie. If you were a frustrated author, it's not going to be a bestseller. That much we can say. But I'm very, very pleased with the progress that has been made. Okay, I really feel like you've done a really, really good job. I too have just a few little quick questions. We have to have a separate permit for rally and for by right. So if after rally I do the family reunion, I need to do the permit process twice.
There is no permit associated with the by right non-rally camping in this ordinance.
Okay.
Unless she wants to exceed.
Well,
Unless I wanted to
that was the issue that Bonnie was talking about, right? And
Right.
so that's pending before the council if they want to expand that. But the way the ordinance is crafted right now is that is the limit, is the 3 campers, 3 camping units, 10 individuals, 7 days, not to be exceeded by permit, but that's something that the council could add in if it wishes.
I would probably say that would be a very good thing to add in. When you have a large family, we often have 50 or 60 people. And so I would assume that if they approve that, I would have 2 separate permits, one for rally and then another for private camping, so to speak, for our reunion.
Yes,
Right.
if the
Okay.
council wants to adjust the ordinance to have that permit for higher by right non-rally camping, they could. And then the things that we would probably want to review and consider, in conjunction with that change is, similar to Joy is saying, that maybe that is limited to, properties over a half acre or something, because a 60-person family reunion on a 50-foot lot probably is going to have different impacts on the neighbors at my house than it would on your house.
Yes, okay, thank you. Explain to me the process, if you talked about if we needed to make adjustments after this first year, how does that happen with a published ordinance?
This, changes to the ordinance would be in the same process that we're going through now. Those would probably filter up through the staff level on we're having a few unanticipated issues with this ordinance that we didn't foresee, come to the council looking for policy direction, draft in association with that guidance, first reading, second reading, approval 20 days later.
Okay, so it does become sort of like a new ordinance on
Yes.
top of that then, okay. Then I kind of wanted to kind of go back to that owner-occupied. What was the rationale for putting that phrase owner-occupied tax designation in there? That appeared just a time ago, and it kind of threw me for a loop.
I think that's been in the ordinance since even the ordinance committee had it. But so the only remnants left in the ordinance from where we've been to where we've gotten today are the owner-occupied status has two considerations. One, in non-rally camping, you can only do non-rally camping, like the family reunion you're talking about, in an owner-occupied residential structure. So that is the limit there that is not related to rally. And then the other owner-occupied designation is with regard to vacant lots. Yep, and that is reflecting what the council's policy judgment has been, that certain high-intensity camping uses, the incentives are more aligned when it's owner-occupied properties. The idea being that my neighbors aren't going to conduct a camping operation that is going to materially affect me, and maybe in a different way that a commercial absentee landlord might commercialize the property for the rally.
Okay. Can we submit a plan now, even though we haven't been published with this ordinance?
The enforcement is on the executive side, and Aaron's the one who's working through the permit and how that's going to work for this year, and I'm not sure what the intention is for that.
Yeah, as soon as we get, again, the permit we just provided is a first draft. So if that looks good, we can get that on the website here relatively soon, and it would be available. But I just need to do a little bit more. I was waiting for some feedback tonight if there are any concerns with that permit. And then I still need to work with some of my teammates on the fire department and a few other folks just to take a look at it. So for the most part, what you see right now, probably 90% solution there, but there might be some adjustments between now and the next couple weeks.
Okay, so we'll hold off for a little bit then.
A little bit.
Okay, and one other quick thing here. Am I understanding that correctly? We do first, second, third reading, then it has to be published, but the published date is the next nearest published date and then plus 20, or?
Yeah, it is a little bit confusing. So the legal requirement for ordinance is title has to be, and the title has to be read. It means it has to appear at 2 city council meetings with at least 5 days notice between them. So ordinance, the typical cadence is first reading, second reading. If it's a planning and zoning matter, which this is not, then a required public hearing, then the ordinance is effective is adopted as of second reading. Then publishing happens whenever the newspaper is publishing, so that date is a little different. It's usually 3, 4, 5 days after second reading, and then publishing is what triggers the 20-day referendum period. And then if the law is not referred, then the ordinance becomes effective on the 21st day following publication.
Okay, so somebody, if they got a wild hair, could send us, or could, I don't know, what is it, apply or whatever for referendum?
Yeah, I mean, it could be referred.
Okay. All right, and actually, I think that's all I have this time. Can you believe it?
Did I fix the guest record requirement in a way that was suitable?
Well, I think you did.
It's not good enough, but it's better than it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're closer to being there. I'm less, I feel I have a much more comfort factor than I did first meeting. First meeting was really a kind of a slap in the face. And I think that was reflected in the hot tempers that night from many people. But I think this is something that could be lived with. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else? Come on up, sir.
My name's David Geringer. I just got a couple questions. I'm out from Sioux Falls, and their place is not big enough for their kids and them grandkids. They stay in a camper. They might stay 3 days. They might stay a week. They come out, ride the bikes, do their side-by-sides. So I don't think, you can't say, well, you can only have your grandkids out here for 7 days. I don't believe any of you would like that idea. That's all you can see your kids for. So I'd like to see that. I don't understand that, I guess.
That's not coming from me. That's a direction from the council. So they're taking that up. And of course, I mean, again, the distinction is important. It's not that the grandkids can't come out for 7 days. It's about how many number of people are camping outside on the property.
Right,
Yeah.
and I know they got one camper, and I've never seen more than that there. And the same way with myself. I've got family that come out and stay in a camper. There might be two of them come out at the same time. Hopefully, they're the two that get along, because there's two that don't get along. So it's easier to have them outside than inside.
I think the idea there, Dave, was just not to have, my kids are I'm just gonna put a tent up permanently in the backyard and have
I
them living
understand.
there, you know?
Yeah, I
So we're
understand.
just trying to find
Right,
where do you draw the line there?
right.
And like Eric said earlier, if you look at us versus, we really looked at surrounding communities, and it's very, like, they just don't allow it. And of course, we have the rally, so that's why we're having this discussion, really, is the rally.
We got several rallies.
And so the idea was just how do you, where do you draw the line, right, on,
Well, I understand. I mean, I've got people that come up and say, hey, man, can I park my camper? And you're only going to be there 2 weeks. I've heard that story before, and I end up kicking them out. So, you know, and I just don't do it. But if a family comes out and they want to stay, or some of my rally guys might come up they come up by themselves. They might come up with their wives and kids. Hey, we're in your yard for 10 days or 5 days, and we're going to go out and travel the hills, and you guys are going to make revenue. The hills are going to make revenue. And I'm going to say yes. And that's, you know, I can't say 7 days for two people or one camper. I can only have 7 days that I can only have campers there. I don't know when people are going to visit me anymore. I'm sure you guys all have people drop in unexpected.
Yeah.
So the other one is I read that you can't have no tips, can't charge. I can't remember what that was. I forgot all my paperwork, but what business is that of the city council or the city of Sturgis, whether somebody wants to give me a tip or want to donate me some money? If they don't want me to charge, that's fine. I can get by that. But if you stay at my house and you want to give me $100 tip, where do you get off having to say, no, you can't take that $100 tip, you know?
I'm not sure where that's at in there about what. We're not telling anybody we can't take money.
Yeah, the distinction that we're trying to draw in the ordinance, again, is it may not be the city of Sturgis saying that, but that is how the state regulates commercial camping, is they regulate if someone is holding out more or one sites to the public for a fee for consideration, then under state law, that makes you a campground. And I did use the example many times ago and wish I wouldn't have of, you know, of course, you know, the city would never know, you know, if someone decides, you know, your grandson decides to
right.
come and give you some cookies in exchange for, like, so that's materially different than someone posting, you know, a campground on a website, taking advanced credit card payments for it. So that's the distinction that we're trying to make.
Because the first time I did any of this, I did it with parking on Main Street with Mike Bashan's place. And I asked them about camping when I come up and got my tax license. And they said, no, you don't need a tax license for camping. You just need it for parking. And I don't know if that's changed.
It probably has.
I see the license above my head sitting on my porch when I come around and checked. But I checked several times and they never, you know, they always said, oh, no, not for camping. That's fine.
The current regulation from the State Department of Revenue is that owners who are offering paid camping for an advance of 10 days are required to have a state sales tax license for that.
Okay.
And we're not enforcing that.
It's not
on
in the
state.
ordinance.
That's on the state to
Okay.
do that.
I can get around them. I mean, I can work with them. Other than that, I don't see nothing with, other than if we got to get a permit, we need time enough to get it to where you can say, well, you need to put an extra porta potty up, or, you know, you need to do whatever. if you're gonna do it this year, because you're running out of time. So, and I tried to apply, I got showers and porta potties, and some of my guys called and said, we're putting in 2 more porta potties. I said, well, I hope you got a lot of money, because I'm not paying for them. And they said, no, we'll pay for them. They even offered to put in a building for better showers. And I said, no, I'm not fighting the city with that either. So, we need time. I mean, we can't just do this, come up August 1st and say, hey, we gotta do all this stuff, because we ain't got time to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Hold on, Bonnie. Is there anybody else that would like to? Hold on, Bonnie. Just let me, anybody else want to? All right, Bonnie, come on.
I'm going to put one of these wheelie chairs back
Yeah.
here so I can just pedal my way up. Okay, my question would be, in that 9106, where it says no fee, rent, charge, donation, contribution, you know, that implies a charge, but then when it says contribution or other consideration, I mean, you know, people help with the, and so if you're doing a group meal or something, you know, they pitch in. So I think that's where some question comes in on that, but it seems to be that the key may not be publicly advertised. When you're talking about family coming in, you're not publicly advertising for that. You're doing that within your communication lines. But are those 2 lines out of the state? Is that your construction, or did that come from the state? I mean, the idea comes from the state, but is the construction from the state?
The construction is my language, and that's typical, you know, lawyer inclination to use all the same word as many times as possible to get the point across. But the idea is not, you know, if you have 3 family members come stay and everyone shares the cost of a meal, that is not something that the city is concerned with. The city is concerned with, are you holding out these sites available as a commercial campground would for people to come and pay and stay and receive camping services on the property?
So if that's your construction, then that could be reworked to sort of obfuscate those details.
To
So
Bonnie.
that we're not lighting Dave's fire over.
Bonnie, too, just something to keep in mind is, you know, I think from the beginning, it's clear that, hey, people need to be able to take advantage of the rally.
Right.
But we don't want Bonnie to run a year-round campground on a residential lot either.
And Bonnie doesn't want to.
Right, I just, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah. Okay.
some of this is directed at that.
Right. And then my other thing with, my question about, where are the definitions? They're back this way. I'm still stuck back here on owner-occupied residential dwelling. So we don't really mean owner-occupied, we mean locally owned? Because there was some place, was that in your prose here at the beginning, that we talked about not wanting non-resident property owners running campgrounds on that property? So it was in that owner-occupied residential dwelling that it's very specific about, okay, it says 1 record owner, does that mean, should that be recorded owner?
That's how I usually have heard it referred to as a record owner of the property, but either would be sufficient.
Oh, I hear, owner of record, but, well, anyway. I guess I wonder about the owner-occupied thing still. If we don't really mean owner-occupied, do we need some clarification on that?
Well, we do mean owner occupied sometimes in the ordinance, and sometimes we mean resident regardless of whether the property is owner occupied or not. So I just wanted to define that term of what owner occupied residential dwelling means in those limited instances in the ordinance where it's operative.
Okay. I just don't want to think it one way and find out that I'm hung up on.
No, it would be
after
the
fact.
text of the ordinance that would control over that particular definition. And the ordinance does make distinctions between residence and an owner-occupied residence that are material depending on the application. So I think both terms can be defined without being confusing with each other.
Well, and at no point did I ever get from the beginning of the ordinance to the end in one sitting, so then when you come back to it, it's like, what did that say before? So I don't mean to be troublesome, I'm just not totally on top of it. Thank you. And thank you for the short pages.
Anybody else? Come on up.
Hi, Misty Myers. And when I was going through it, when I was in the back on the application pages, I saw where it said that for extra garbage totes, it said a 90-gallon one per 5 people. And I thought that was pretty excessive because I have 5 people living in my house and we don't even fill our garbage tote for the whole week. So, and
Well, it did say recommended.
Yeah.
And I have 5 in my house too, and I'm usually full. So it really just goes down to recommendation. It's not necessarily tied to a number. The intent is that, not having overflowing garbage totes. One thing that as I was working through those 3 examples, there's, in one case, you may have a 300 tote, but you're going to have enough people there. It's going to need either have to have 2 300 totes or a 300 tote and a 90 tote, or you can just request Public Works to do another pickup, and they'll just do that pickup, and you can have limited number of totes. But again, that was this recommendation. Again, it really goes down to each individual family or individual campground, how much garbage is generated. I mean, it's again, that's why it's there. So the intent is give or the owner of that property or the renter of that property with the owner's permission, the ability to, maintain, their solid waste.
well, yeah, because most of us know what we need.
Right.
I mean, I know what I need. I have my tote, and then we have garbage cans that we've used in the past. I know. I mean, yeah, it'd be nice to have one more. But I mean, per 5 people, I thought that was a bit much for.
Again, I was just looking at it from a general family, talking with our sanitation folks. That's kind of what their general rule of thumb is. But again, every family's a little different because there are some weeks where I'm overflowing, on top of it, and there's some weeks where it's only half full. So it just kind of, that changes. But again, it was just a recommendation.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Come on up.
This just brought up another quick question for me. If I say that I have a maximum of 25 tent campers and 4 RVs for the week of the rally, and all of a sudden we have somebody show up from Michigan and I'm now at 26, 27, 28 tents, what's my exposure?
So you said tents, or are you talking about number of campers?
Yeah, I'm saying tents are 26. Most of the people, as we've discussed before, are either couples, 2 to a tent, or they're singles. So potentially, looking at this, you could have 25 people, 25 tents, and a couple of the RVs, and then
something
but then
changes
also
during the rally where you have more people or you have more
Yeah.
camping units. Well, I did put the max down there because I think that's one of the things that you were talking about last week, because it's not always consistent from day to day. So we were looking at what the max was, but even with the max number, it really comes back down to the size of the property. There on some of those examples, you probably could add more people on that and it'd been just fine. If you do go over on camping units or campers, I would probably never know. The only time I would probably become aware of it if there wasn't complaint, and our code enforcement went out there and had the permit, they're looking at it, number of campers and number of camping units, then maybe at that point it would be identified. But even if it's additional campers and additional camping units, if it still fits within that space, I really don't see a problem with that. It would be getting to Eric's example where you have, a small, quarter lot and you have, a bunch of people or camping units stuffed into that, that would probably become an issue.
Okay, I just wanted, as you know,
good question.
We've
No, I
got
appreciate
about
it.
almost 3 acres, and so even at 50%, I could have a ton more people than 25 to 30 up there, and you wouldn't even know the difference on
You're
the
probably
property.
right.
And
And so I would say for people putting those permits together is just kind of anticipate what you think that max is. But again, it is a little bit of anticipation, because you just don't know. Even as I was putting those examples together, how am I exactly going to know in June 15th how many campers I'm going to have?
Exactly.
So again, I think a lot of the campgrounds have been operated for a long time. And so there's probably some historical data and some analysis. They probably have some insights on it. But again, we're just trying to, be able to utilize your space effectively. And again, if you can handle more than that, I would probably never know.
This is one of those discretion issues that can be a little bit difficult when you have the permit system the way it's been developed with this ordinance that we're looking at now versus the ordinance committee. And I would say the same thing as Aaron when it comes to permits is, if I have a permit at my house, if I have a 7,000 square foot yard and I've got a permit for 4 campers and then all of a sudden I decide to get 12, that's a material difference than if you're approved for 25 tents and then you have 26 on a 3-acre parcel. So those are the kind of things that the ordinance reserves to the discretion of the city administrator of, is this in line with the permit conditions and the owner's camping plan, or is this a material misstatement and, something that has way expanded use than was contemplated in the permit?
Because I just never know if somebody from Rapid City who actually lives there in Rapid City all of a sudden says, I'm a little too under the sauce to drive home. I'm pitching a tent tonight, so I don't want to.
Sure. I mean, that's just common sense. I don't think there's an issue with that
Okay.
at all. Just from a permit perspective, we've been thinking through what that flow would look like, because obviously, the city administrator is probably not going to be doing us all in the vacuum at all. So the permits will end up going to the planning and permitting section. There's a director there, and they'll facilitate the process. Those permits would be reviewed by Public Works, as Eric was talking about. It'd be reviewed by Public Safety, possibly law enforcement, particularly on the fire chief, and have them review it. And so we'll have our teammates review it within their particular specialized lanes, and they'll come up to me with a recommendation. So there was a third sheet that's for the city that talks about conditions. It says it could be just approved, great plan. There could be approved or with conditions, add in maybe a garbage tote or add in a porta pot based on the numbers of people and if they're not using the bathrooms inside the residence, those type of things. But as Mayor Pro Tem Dargett said, is that we're trying to get to yes. Trying to be able to facilitate a safe rally, but also meet the historical norms that's been going on when it comes down to residential camping. And I do think, over the evolution of this process of going through this, I think we've been able to, try to capture that, to try to have something that's common sense, recognize that the rally is unique. And we're not necessarily talking about non-rally dates, but just during the rally, and be able to come up with something that allows people to, to monetize that event.
Okay. And it was brought out to my attention that many of the state campgrounds have a maximum of 14 days that you can be there before you have to get up and move. So that might be something that to be considered, is that instead of the 7, maybe the 14. I doubt if very many people would ever even get to that, but it does allow for the neighbors to have the grandkids there for a couple of weeks or whatever. So that would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any more questions, comments from council?
Does adding this allowable permit for the non-rally camping for people with bigger lots, would that derail this being a first reading without that being part of it? Or
Not in my opinion.
Okay.
The state law allows plenty of changes to occur. You know, there's different considerations between zoning ordinances and non-zoning ordinances. The operative language is if it's a material change. If we were, you know, between first reading and second reading, going back to the ordinance committee's proposed framework, that would be a material change. But adding something minor like you know, the 3 days in advance of the rally up to the 7 days, or even just expanding to allow a permit in the non-rally section, that wouldn't be material enough, in my view, to need to put another delay in between first and second reading, although it's always up to the council.
Were you able to get all those notes tonight?
As far as, you know, exactly what I'm would be proposing to change based on what I've heard, again, I think what I would prefer to do is to go through some of the comments when asked to look at particular language and think through it and not do it on the fly. If the council's prepared to do first reading, what I would probably do is either look for direction on the 3-day versus 7-day with regard to the rally window. Everything else, I will probably accept all the tracked changes in this version, give you a clean version for the next meeting, and then we'll go through. And then on that one, I would show any other changes I made to either the Board of Adjustment language or anything else that
We'd be able to have second reading on that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess, do we have a motion for the first reading of ordinance 2026-3 with the changes of the window?
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
If we did that permit for non-rally, where are we gonna? When does a property become, I come get a permit for the rally, I do my, whatever it is, 17 days or whatever it is, and then I do it again in the summer for 15 days, and then I do it again in you know, how are we keeping a residence from becoming year-round camping? Because I don't think that's not what anybody's wanting, but we don't want to. I don't think my neighbors probably care if I had some camping during the rally, but they're certainly going to care if I have people coming in and out 6 months a year for 2 weeks at a time.
To answer the question, I mean, the way to prevent that would be to insert some sort of numerical, you know, some sort of number of days into the ordinance. And the way that it's handled right now is that these 3 camping units, 10 individuals can be there for up to 7 days. So, I mean, you know, when you go 14, you start getting a little closer into what you're talking about, Jesse. When you start getting into a month, you're going a little bit more, and then eventually maybe I can just rent out the camper that I'm storing in my backyard and, you know, as a year-round resident. So, yeah, that's the distinction that we're trying to reach, and not get the residential campgrounds into a neighborhood, but is there some, or into a campground. But is there some flexibility on that date? Absolutely. It's up to the council.
Okay. Well, like I said, do we have a motion for the first reading of the temporary residential rally camping ordinance with the addition of the window being changed from 3 to 7 days ahead of the rally dates?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Got a first by Terry, second by Ruth. All those in favor say yes.
Is that the only change that we're looking for?
Well, that's the ones he said the state today, and he can get the rest from what he has.
So what is your guidance when it comes down to non-rally? Do you want to allow for a permit process non-rally camping, residential camping? I mean, we'll need to understand that before we start making adjustments. That is a key change.
I believe we do. Yeah.
You can change the length too then?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
10 days, 14 days?
I was going to say 14 days, I think, is more than efficient. And I mean, because then you start getting into your neighbor's business and,
Well, then you're up to 34 days because you can go 20 days, 7 days before, 10 days during the rally, 3 days after, that's 20 days. And then up to 14 days, now we're up to 34 days that a person could rent their property out as a residential campground.
What's the current? The current one's 21 days for the year.
Right now, we have the non-permit is for up to seven days, correct, Eric?
In the current, in the proposed ordinance?
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess when I said current, I meant the current in-place
Right,
ordinance.
right,
is
understand. There's 21 days in the current ordinance, and right now, we're at 20 days with the change, adding 7 days prior to the rally, and right now, we're at 7 for non-rally, so we're at 27 days right now.
I guess I like the number 30. I guess that'd be my, I mean.
10 days?
Yeah, 10 days.
So 10 days on, so anything over 7 days would require a permit? Because right now, you could go up to 7 days, 3 camping units, 10 campers, correct, Eric? And not need a permit. So if you go over 7 days, max of 10, anything over, is there a limit on camping units? Right now, they have by right of 3.
I would keep it at 3.
Okay. So we're looking at just the days then. Okay.
I'm not overly thrilled with 10 days ahead of the rally either. A week ahead of it, or whatever you want to call it, the 7 days. I think that's a little too long. We denied parking, motorcycle-only parking downtown, but now all of a sudden we're going to open it up so we can have camping in all our yards.
I was thinking of family reunions.
Well, right, but we're back to, we're talking,
During the rally.
right,
Initially, had been talking about Monday, starting that
Right.
Monday. And then it changed to 3 days prior to. And Monday would have been, 5 days prior to, or something like that?
So do you want to restate?
So what's your motion?
Huh?
Can you restate your motion, please?
I don't,
know.
just a clarification, I'm not sure if the motion needs to be revised, so let me tell you what I think I hear and what we'll prepare for the next meeting. So the motion on the floor right now is to approve first reading with the change of the 3 days before the rally window is going to be changed to 7, and then coming up for second reading, we will propose some sort of language for a permit that will allow the 7-day max to go to 10 without changing the numbers. The council can discuss and consider that at the next meeting in conjunction, and anything else it likes, in conjunction with second reading.
That would be fine with me.
Yeah, at least we have your guidance on that respect, so we understand the limits.
You want to?
I'm with the gentleman in the back. We're beating this thing to death, and he's going to need time to get his permit, so we need to get this figured out.
Well, I'll tell you, we'll start accepting the permit here soon, even before it's published.
So does Terry need to recite his motion, or can we go with, okay. All right, so I have a first by Terry, a second by Ruth. All those in favor of the motion, yes?
Yes.
Those opposed, no? Okay, Mark is the only no, all are yeses, so that first reading passes. All right, we'll move on to 11.2. Consider operator pathways under option 2 for the City of Sturgis Motorcycle Rally sponsorship. Eric and Aaron, I think you both have this.
More rally, and another one that we've been talking about for a long time. So this this is the operator pathway. The council's had this memorandum for a little over a month now. We've been talking about the rally sponsorship program for, since you all took office and since Mayor Forrester took office, of some of the big structural changes that the mayor and council were proposing at the commencement of their terms. So the council's been sitting on that memorandum. The council already decided to outsource the commercialization of the city's sponsorship and intellectual property inventory to a third-party operator. And then the question in front of the council now is which operator pathway suits the city at this time. And the memo that is in your packets again is trying to identify and evaluate those 3 different operator pathways. We've talked about it considerably. The memo talks about it considerably. You know, this is a significant policy and operational decision for the city when it comes to how to effectively manage and monetize this asset. You know, touching on a lot of aspects of city operations and funding. So happy to answer any questions. I think I've said most of what I need to say in the memo. I am happy to answer any questions that you have. This is certainly something, if the council thinks it needs more time, I know that you've been reviewing the memo. I know you've been discussing it with each other. I know you've been having conversations with your constituents. Some of you have been coming to me and asking me other questions. If you're prepared to make a decision tonight, you're certainly welcome to. If you're not prepared to make a decision tonight and you think you need more time, that's fine. Staff is not standing still while we're waiting for you. We're continuing to move forward with 2026 operations, and you'll see our proposal to do that coming up later on this agenda. And so, yeah, I'm happy to stand by and answer any questions that the council may have about this transition.
I just have a comment. You know, I've had still many people asking from the public on this, and that's why I asked you earlier today if we can table a tabled item so we can get more input and listen to what the citizens have to say. So
I don't know if you're ready for a motion or not, but I guess I'd like, there's a couple other people who want to meet with us, so I would move that we table this till the next council meeting.
all righty, I have a motion from Mark to table it. and a s-
Before a vote, would you like to see if there's any current public input?
And a second by Jim, and I'll open it to the public. Anybody in the public have anything? None being seen. All those in favor of the motion say yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no. That motion carries to table it again till the next meeting. All right, 12 reports. 12.1, consider resolution 2026-19 concerning the transition of sponsorship and brand program to a third-party operator. Eric?
So this resolution is the bridge transition piece of the sponsorship discussion. It's intended to authorize the near-term staff work that needs to be done now to preserve continuity and move this year's sponsorships forward while the council continues to evaluate the long-term operator pathway. With respect to the 2026 86th rally, the resolution is intended to add transparency and clearer financial structure to this year's sponsorship activity, but to do so in a way that does not materially interrupt the existing operating model during the transition. The idea is that we can improve visibility and accountability now while keeping the program functional during the transition and handoff to the operator. So this item is not really about forcing the final structural decision tonight. It's about making sure the city can manage the transition responsibly in the meantime. Be happy to answer any questions about the resolution or staff's proposal on the interim solution while the council selects the operator pathway.
Anybody have questions for Eric from council? Anybody from the public? None being seen. Do I have a motion to consider resolution 2026-19?
I'll move.
Got a first by Mark,
A second.
second by Ruth. All those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Moving on to 12.2, consider resolution 2026-16 approval final plot for the McMillan's Easterly Edition. Rick's got this one.
Good evening, council. Up for consideration tonight is Resolution 2026-16, which is the approval of the final plat of Lot 11 revised of Block 21 McMillan's Easterly Addition to the city of Sturgis. Applicant has submitted a final plat request to combine lots 11, 12, and 13 into one single lot known as Lot 11 revised. The purpose of this plat is to consolidate the 3 existing platted lots into one unified parcel, which will simplify future development. He wants to build a shop on it. The ownership and the utility service configuration. This did go to the Planning and Zoning Commission. They have reviewed it and recommended approval of the plat, and staff has reviewed it for conformance with both the subdivision, which is now Chapter 154, and the zoning compliance, which is now Chapter 156 of our newly adopted code. With that, the city staff and the Planning Commission would recommend approval of Resolution 2026-16 for the final plat as submitted, finding that it does meet all applicable subdivision and zoning requirements. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Anybody in council have questions for Rick? Anybody from the public? None being seen, can we get a motion to approve Resolution 2026-16?
Second.
Got a first by Jim, a second by Alex. All those approve the motion?
Aye.
Yes.
Yes, opposed, no? Okay, 12.3, consider Resolution 2026-17. Rick?
Consideration of Resolution 2026-17 is approving the final plat of lots 9A and 9B of Bowman Edition and the dedicated public right-of-way of Bowman Street, City of Sturgis, Meade County. Applicant has submitted a final plat for lots 9A and 9B of Bowman Edition, along with the dedication of a public right-of-way for Bowman Street. This plat represents a reconfiguration of the former Lot 9 Bowman Edition into 2 separate individual lots, and includes the additional right-of-way dedication to support Bowman Street. Lot 9A ends up being 0.47 acres. Lot 9B, the remainder is 1.69 acres. Staff has reviewed this as well, and this did go to Planning Commission meeting, and the Planning Commission did recommend approval. City staff did review it, and it does comply with the zoning requirements for the lot size and configuration, and there is no adverse effects of this. One thing, if the council does approve resolution, we will be coming back with a developer agreement on some of the improvements that were granted a variance to not have to build at this point in time. So we will be coming back with that once the resolutions are approved. As Eric indicated earlier, we have to get them in the newspaper, and then the 20 days start. So we'll have time to bring that back before the plat actually gets filed. So with that, city staff and the Planning Commission would recommend to the council approval of Resolution 2026-17 and approve the final plat as submitted.
Anybody have any questions for Rick? Anybody from the public? None being seen, do I have a motion to consider Resolution 2026-17?
Motion to approve. Second.
Got a first by Alex, a second from Terry. All those in favor of the motion, yes?
Yes.
Those opposed, no?
Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Rick. Moving on to 12.4, consider Resolution 2026-18, fee resolution. Eric?
Fee resolution. This is an issue that was raised by Mayor Forrester early in his term. One of his objectives was to see that some of the hard dollar amounts that were for different fees and fines that were embedded in the code were removed from the code, and that instead those fines and fees were established by annual fee resolution by the council. I know that is common to what many other municipalities and counties do, is to get those fees out of the code, because as we discussed with Joy here earlier this evening, amending the ordinances is a long and complex and time-consuming process, whereas and then all of the fines and fees are just scattered throughout the code. And Mayor Forrester thought it would be better if in one action the council approved all the fees associated with that year, early in the year as we do with some of our other annual resolutions. So the time to do that was, the most appropriate time to do that seemed to be in conjunction with the codification process. So we had the codifiers go through the code and identify those sections of the code that had a hard dollar fine or fee within the code language, and then to instead insert the language that the fine or fee would be established by the council in its annual fine and fee resolution. So what this is, we do not have the ability right now to do the all of the city fines and fees and codes, but staff is working on it. But the limited purpose of this resolution is to just take those hard dollar amounts that have always existed in the code and that existed in the code prior to recodification that we're referencing this fee resolution, and then get those adopted. And then staff will follow up probably sometime after the rally with a more master amended fine and fee list that will break it down by departments. But for now, what you're seeing in Exhibit A are those sections of the code that we were able to identify a hard dollar fee, and then we included the legacy code citation and the new code citation so that you could see it. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Anybody on council have questions for Eric? Anybody in the public? None being seen? Anybody have a motion to consider resolution 2026-18?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a first by Ruth, a second by Mark. All those in favor of the motion, yes?
Yes.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries. 12.5, introduction of ordinance amending election-related provisions on the City of Sturgis Code. And this is pretty much just an informational piece, correct?
It is informational. We are trying to maintain the council's past practice of, when possible, to have an introduction of ordinances prior to first reading, just so the council has a heads up. This one seemed appropriate, especially for that, because we have a little bit of time before this needs to be ultimately addressed. Our deadline to have something enacted is January. And then just also because there are going to be some initial policy considerations for the council that will probably guide drafting. So the primary issue, all we're doing is we are doing some housekeeping amendments to the code to conform with recent changes to state law. Of course, almost everything related to city council elections terms is all set by the South Dakota legislature, and when they change their laws, we follow those laws, whether we've updated our code or not. This is one of those situations where we should update our code. So the primary thing needing the council's attention is, historically, Sturgis's and many municipalities' annual elections have always been held in April. That is no longer an option that the state gives us, and the recent elections would be in conjunction with the normal state primary or general election. So those are the two options that are available. And then depending on what the council selects, there is going to be some additional cleanup. If the council wants to, it's going to extend the terms of some of the existing officers. That's contemplated by the law. The other thing is the council does have the choice to only hold its regular municipal elections in even-numbered years. That is an election that the council, a selection that the council can make. It is not required to do that, and that would also have some secondary effects as well. So those are the two main policy issues for the council. I'll put everything together to make sure that our code matches what the state law is, and we can either be prepared for. It probably would be a good idea to have a selection on whether the council wants to go with even year only elections and whether it wants to be June or November before we start drafting, but it's not necessary. And again, we do have until January of the election year. The next election year is next year. So if the council needs some time to think about it, that it's welcome to have that too. If it wants any other follow-up memos or just those, but that's just kind of the preview of what to expect.
What's the timeline on this? What do you?
Drop dead is we got to have an ordinance in place by January. So we got at least a good 6 months.
Be here before we know it, so.
It will be. And we should decide when our election cycle is going to be.
I guess my recommendation is to do it sooner than later.
Oh, yeah.
And get this one behind us.
Let's not kick the can down the road.
We're just gonna end up, there's just two decisions, whether we're gonna go for June and whether it's a 2 or 3 year term, right? That's basically our options, right?
Well, It's not the 2 to 3 year term, although that technically is always one of your option. And I believe state law is 2, 3, or 4 years, and we're of course at 3 years. So the council can keep the same or shorten or extend the terms. But the question is, would we be having elections only in even numbered years? Right now we go 2 years and then skip a year.
Personally, I would be inclined to keep it how we do it now, as far as, you know, not only in even years. You know, we do 2 and then we have a year off, and 2 and have a year off. And that really is the only way to keep a 3-year term.
And then you want the June rather than November?
I like June.
I do too.
You know, there's a lot of other things going on in June or November. What I don't like about November is if we're pushed up to the wire on budgets or year-end reports or whatever, as historically we have been. I guess last year we weren't, but the year prior we were. We just don't have any time.
I could go for the June and just keep our terms the same length that we have them now, if that's.
So what that would mean is that in one of the years, we would have the election on the day of the, let's see, I gotta think through this. So we will be doing it in conjunction with the state primary is going to occur only in even numbered years. And so any the state's elections, there would be, if under that proposal, there would be 1 year where we were having it in conjunction with the primary and another where we may be the only election occurring that year.
How long are the terms
What
for
about
the school board?
School board, right? They picked June.
Right, they did. And what's their term?
I think they do different. You know,
Do they do
don't they
4-year
do like a
terms or
2, a
2?
3, and a 4 or something? It's not all the same. I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but I believe they picked June.
The problem, yeah, as Jesse, earlier we talked a little bit, that the 2-year term ends up, the whole council can rotate out in 2 years, and there's no consistency, to where if you get the 3rd year in there, it helps a little bit, but,
You know, I do think there's advantages both to June and November. I mean, looking at June, you know, I've heard weather-wise, you know, you were probably right in the middle of the budget, so you'd have the opportunity to have some input on the final half of that budget, you know, based on what your platform was. Some positives of doing it in November, you know, it is the general election when you do it on those times where you have more, I wouldn't say more turnout, but during the primary, you know, a lot of times good for the Republican Party on that side of it. There's, you know, for example, for sheriff, sometimes you don't really, there's nobody running. So you could get some turnout in November. Also, I mean, coming into the middle of the year, you know, you're getting ready for the rally in August. Again, you're right in the middle of the budget year. So if you did have significant change in council, that could be, you know, problematic. But normally we don't have more than 4 changes because we do it every 3 years. But I think from our perspective, and we've talked about this from a staff perspective, I think any of those options work, June or November. Just wanted to make sure that we at least considered, you know, the pros and the cons.
Well, I'm like I think every 3 and then doing it in June would be, that's my idea.
Yeah.
Consensus? Do you need put something together and we vote on it next meeting?
Don't need to. The council's welcome to if it wants to. Otherwise, the direction I'll take from this is to go ahead and hopefully for the next meeting have first reading of an ordinance that then will maintain the 3-year terms, select, I'm sorry, you said June, right?
Yes.
Select June as the election date and not go with the even year option that the state provides us. And then some other housekeeping cleanups in the code related to the mayor pro tem, the vice president, about 4 or 5 different bills that we're working on the last 2 years that we need to update. So I'll anticipate having first reading of that ready for the next meeting, and the council can always make changes at that time if it wants to.
Council comfortable with that? Okay. Anybody in the public have any questions, comments? None being seen. We do have a need for an executive session, personnel, legal, and contracts. I remember no action will be taken. Am I
Yep.
correct?
Yes, that's correct. And then we discuss those matters, and those would be pursuant to SDCL 1-25-2 sub 1, sub 3, and sub 4.
Okay. Do I have a motion to go into exec session?
I'll move.
Mark was first. Jim was second. All those approve the motion, say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? We're good to go, Deb? Okay. We're back from exec session. We're gonna resume meeting, and we are up for adjournment.
I'll move to adjourn.
I got a, jeez, I got a first from Mark, a second from Jim. All those in favor of the motion, yes?
Yes.
Those opposed, no. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you guys again.